All right, let's get started. Welcome and thank you for joining our webinar today, Mitigating Risk in Aging Federal IT Systems, with Senior Federal Engineer at BeyondTrust, Shunta Sanders. My name is Sarah, your webinar host today, and I'd like to remind you all to please submit your questions via the GoToMeeting console anytime throughout the webinar, and we'll cover your questions at the end during our Q&A time. Also, today's session is being recorded, and all attendees will receive a link to the recording and the slides shown here today within 2 business days from now, so be on the lookout for that follow-up. So now that all the housekeeping items are out of the way, I'd like to welcome Shunta to the line, who will jump right into his presentation. Hey, Shunta, welcome. Please take it away.
Perfect. Thank you, Sarah, for the introduction. As Sarah mentioned, my name is Shunta Sanders. I'm a senior engineer here at BeyondTrust, supporting our federal division. Today, we're going to discuss how you and your team can lessen the amount of risk you face on a daily basis, despite certain obstacles like aging IT infrastructure. Our agenda for today is very simple. First, we'll share with you the results of our federal cybersecurity threat survey we sent out in the early part of this year. And then we'll discuss ways you and your team can secure aging information systems by utilizing privileged access management and vulnerability management technologies. So as I previously stated, in the early part of this year, January-February timeframe, ReRes Research of Dallas, Texas, on behalf of BeyondTrust, sent out a short online survey to over 100 federal IT and security professionals to gain insight and perspective on how they approach securing their IT systems and achieve compliance with various federal cybersecurity mandates. 2 things really stood out from the survey as a result. The first was the results quickly confirmed that there's a great deal of aging infrastructure in use within the federal government, something we here at BeyondTrust were already aware of from our dealings with the federal government. And 2, these professionals believe that legacy or aging IT systems create a breeding ground for increased risk. In fact, 81% say aging IT infrastructures have a somewhat to extremely large impact on their cybersecurity risk. Another 61% say aging infrastructure is a roadblock to achieving federal cybersecurity mandate compliance. And another 73% said aging IT infrastructure impacts their agency's ability to achieve their mission. But what really kept these federal IT professionals up at night, per the survey, was 3 things: application vulnerabilities, nation-state attacks, and malware. These 3 top concerns are not shocking. Despite what political party you support, you turn on the news any given day and you hear about how our intelligence community confirmed that Russia interfered with our presidential elections by means of a nation-sponsored attack. Or you hear about a new victim that was affected by that vulnerability within a widely used OS, which allowed ransomware to spread to about 150 countries and cripple several well-known organizations and a few divisions within various government agencies as well. Application vulnerabilities, nation-state attacks, and malware are common ways an attacker can gain access to a system, either through a compromised password or a known vulnerability. And once in, they can move freely throughout an environment until their goal is achieved, oftentimes planting malicious code along the way. So that begs the question, what's being done to fight risk within the federal government? And what cybersecurity tools did those polls view as critical to securing their information? Well, again, per the survey, 91% said privileged access management and 88% said vulnerability patching are the tools of most importance in regards to protecting their information. And we here at BeyondTrust would agree with that. These technologies restrict user privileges and close off security weaknesses in systems. But more work and further education is required. The survey also showed areas for improvement. For example, 63% report less than fully mature vulnerability remediation programs. In fact, 6% have no remediation plan whatsoever. And another 14% do only the bare minimum required by compliance mandate. And we can't forget about aging infrastructure and the risk it puts on federal IT systems and, more importantly, federal IT data. So in my past life, I specialized in IT infrastructure, servers, networking, storage arrays, virtualization, etc. And I would meet countless customers within the federal government who all had similar pain points, such as limited budgets and aging gear. Sometimes the equipment or systems they had were either end of life or end of service life or both, but still in production use. Terrifying, scary even. The fact of the matter is, aging infrastructure can make federal systems more vulnerable to attack. And sadly, no matter how hard you try, one day you may experience a breach. 42% of those surveyed have experienced a data breach within the past 6 months. 42%. A staggering 1 in 8 has experienced a data breach within the past 30 days. So said another way, the typical federal IT system experiences one breach every 347 days. And these breaches aren't cheap. Those polled reported that the typical data breach costs more than $91,000, and that's just the average. Higher profile breaches can run into millions of dollars in damages. Office of Personnel Management, or OPM, as many of you are familiar with, estimates that there are roughly 7,000 federal IT systems in use today. And the annual cost due to data breaches is $637 million every year. But possibly even more important than money is loss of productivity and loss of reputation and all the bad publicity that comes with it due to a breach. The fact of the matter is, aging infrastructure breeds risk. The survey also uncovered plenty of examples of aging infrastructure in the federal government. For example, a not so surprising 47% of federal agencies still use a Windows OS that was originally released in 2001. Now, I won't name the agency, but in my past life, I worked at a well-known federal government agency headquartered in Washington, D.C. back in 2010. When I was working there, they were using a Windows Server OS in production that was 10 years old. Breaches occurred on a regular basis. Breaches like this and other breaches experienced in the federal government drove a third of respondents, 35% to be exact, to report that this kind of aging infrastructure had a somewhat to large impact on their ability to affect vulnerability patching, a key task needed to reduce risk within an environment. Federal government IT employees and their teams have a heavy responsibility. They're tasked daily with securing their agency's IT systems and its valuable data. It's a job that takes a lot of hard work and dedication to protect these systems from the multitude of risks they face on a regular basis from external and sometimes internal threats. To lessen the amount of risk federal agencies face on a regular basis, change is needed in regards to how agencies address the risks they face daily. But as we all know, change can be difficult. It takes time and usually costs money. Within the federal government, employees and their teams must contend with limited or unfunded budgets, complex procurement cycles, limited cycles for training and innovation due to maintaining these aging IT systems. And sadly, non-forward-thinking individuals, those individuals not necessarily supportive of change. That's a lot to deal with. In an ideal world, all federal agencies would be open to adopting new approaches to deal with cybersecurity risk, willing to implement innovative technologies and methodologies instead of sticking with the status quo, be open to collaboration with industry experts, counterparts within other government agencies, or their commercial counterparts, or even OEM and vendor counterparts to help secure their IT systems and data. But again, change takes time. So until that change comes, how can agencies address these threats today? Well, for the rest of this webinar, we will review best practices that will mitigate risk in legacy IT systems and remain best practices when new modern IT systems are implemented. Each best practice that we will review will contain one or more use cases where federal IT organizations can show an immediate risk reduction by deploying BeyondTrust Power Broker Privileged Access Management or Retina Vulnerability Management solutions. The first best practice you can implement to start reducing risk in your environment is to manage privileged credentials with greater discipline, eliminate administrator rights, and enforce least privilege. Again, per the survey, 30% of respondents believe that insider threats pose a significant threat, and 35% believe their users have more privileges than are required. The fact is, known escalation attacks have been around for years and are still being used. These attacks require local administrator rights. To reduce insider threats, the misuse of privileges, and prevent lateral movement within an organization if a breach does occur, you must adopt a least privilege model by removing admin rights from users and storing all privileged credentials in a secure safe. Now, a common use case associated with this particular whether your IT infrastructure is old or new, shared passwords and shared SSH keys continue to persist across servers, databases, network devices, applications, and the list goes on and on. Thus, the need to address shared account risk should be a top priority within your agency. Reducing risk by driving accountability over shared accounts is a critical step. So, where do you start? Well, the first step is to invest in a password management solution to address this risk, with the goal being to drive control and accountability over shared accounts and their credentials by onboarding these accounts into a password manager and ensuring that these accounts are only accessed when needed. If a user has administrator access within a network, they basically have the keys to the kingdom. But should they have free reign? A federal agency on average has tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of assets or systems within their environment, which means a large amount of administrator accounts, local administrator accounts, and service accounts. It can be challenging to keep track of all the privileged accounts within a large enterprise environment. By implementing an automated password management tool like BeyondTrust PowerBroker Password Safe, organizations can effectively find, manage, and monitor all privileged credentials. BeyondTrust PowerBroker Password Safe gives federal agencies better control over who has access to privileged accounts. It will provide you with real-time visibility over privileged account usage by recording and controlling when users have access. It will provide assurance that privileged account passwords and SSH keys are randomized per your outlined security policy, and automatically rotate those passwords on any hardware or application, among other features and capabilities that will be discussed later in this webinar. Another common use case associated with this best practice of managing privileged credentials with greater discipline and eliminating administrator rights and enforcing least privilege is controlling other privileged accounts. As previously stated, it's not just administrator rights you need to get control over. No, it's all privileged accounts within your environment. Again, including local administrator and service accounts. As the slide states, local accounts create significant risk, everything from weak password management to account deprovisioning backdoors. Now, to address this risk, there are several options to consider based on your agency's specific needs to manage these accounts. As always, it starts with education. You need to first and foremost understand what you have in your environment and how you can limit or control the access those accounts have. So how do you start? Well, high level, one of the easiest ways to do this is by onboarding all service accounts and local administrator accounts into an automated password management tool like PowerBroker Password Safe. Then require all requests for passwords go through Password Safe and automatically cycle all service accounts and all local admin privilege account passwords. Then enhance the process by including session management, a feature automatically included with PowerBroker Password Safe, to further control access to the privileged accounts using dynamic access control policies and recording all activities in addition to capturing keystrokes. By implementing this process, all privileged activities to your application environment will be controlled and audited. Now, To address the aging IT infrastructure issue many federal agencies must contend with today that quite frankly pose a major risk to their data, many customers I talk to within the federal organizations are either seriously considering moving some resources or workloads to the cloud or have already moved some resources to a cloud environment. Now, when I say cloud environment, that includes private on-premise clouds as well as public cloud environments. Now, while this is a step in the right direction and in theory should help those agencies with limited budgets and complex procurement cycles by moving from a CapEx to an OpEx model, those resources that are moved to the cloud still need to be secured. And many federal agencies are seeing firsthand that many traditional security tools are architected for on-premise environments. And when extended to the cloud or across hybrid environments, these tools leave gaps that allow for excessive privilege access and permission. BeyondTrust can help fill those gaps by providing a comprehensive, multi-layered approach to password management, least privilege, and appropriate use across physical, cloud virtual desktops, and servers and services in the cloud. We do this in a couple of different ways. One way is by means of our connector technology. It's a unique industry technology that enumerates instances in the cloud. We also have various agents for many of our technologies, such as Retina Host Security Scanner for our vulnerability solution, Power Broker for Windows for our least privileged technology, in addition to Power Broker for Unix and Linux for instances deployed in the cloud for real-time management. We have APIs for our password safe product. We also have cloud offerings. We have Beyond SaaS that provides you with vulnerability assessment, web application scanning, in addition to privileged cloud management capabilities. So simply put, by means of these solutions that I just mentioned, you can monitor privileged user, session, and file activities for unauthorized access or changes to key files and directories within the cloud. You can analyze asset and user behavior to detect, suspect, and or recognize malicious activities of insiders and or compromised accounts while in the cloud. You can also provide fine-grained policy controls over what privileged Windows, Mac, Unix, and Linux users can do once they are logged on to a cloud workload or a system. And finally, you can deliver greater visibility over privileged credentials usage across commands and applications to help achieve compliance and security objectives regardless of where the application is deployed. So let's do a brief recap. So far, we have discussed how by means of our Power Broker password safe technology, we can manage privileged credentials with greater discipline and eliminate administrative rights within an environment. Another common use case for our portfolio of privileged access management solutions is preventing unauthorized software from being installed by enforcing least privilege as our best practice stated earlier. So at the end of the day, end users will be end users, and some end users are pretty savvy. A few weeks ago, I met with a group of engineers with a federal agency that had roughly about 100 plus field agents dispersed across the country. All of them had an agency-issued Windows laptop in their possession. Now, even though these agents are trusted and cleared, they are not IT professionals. So the IT engineers for this particular agency wanted to ensure that the field agents weren't able to install software on those machines that may put the overall network at risk when they, from time to time, gain access to the network via a VPN connection, for example. This is a valid concern. End users want the functionality and convenience of their favorite applications, like file sharing applications such as Dropbox or some third-party instant messaging application, or their favorite music streaming application like Spotify while they're at work. But unauthorized installations of any application that goes against agency standard operating procedures can insert risk into the environment. When it comes to security, you should never have blind faith that end users will follow every detail of your security policies to the letter. No, instead, you must enforce it. By means of our Power Broker for Windows and Mac solutions, agencies can enforce least privilege and prevent unapproved software from being installed on a Windows or Mac machine. These solutions can protect you from internal threats by blocking prohibited applications such as known hacking tools from ever running. It eliminates the intentional, accidental, and indirect misuse of privileges on these assets. It can also help you monitor, alert, or block file system changes, even when users have elevated privileges with file integrity monitoring. And finally, it could proactively identify applications and tasks that require administrator privileges before removal of administrator privileges even occur. But what about Unix and Linux environments? What can be done to enforce least privilege within a Unix Linux environment? Well, I'm sure many of you are thinking sudo. And as the least privilege tool for Unix and Linux, sudo has been around for a long time. And quite frankly, the price is right. Sudo is essentially free with any major release of Unix or Linux. And honestly, it's a good tool for the price. But it has its place. And an enterprise security-aware environment is not one of them. As the number of systems and users have grown, management of sudo in the federal agencies is becoming very time-consuming, making many federal IT engineers who are responsible for sudo very fearful of audits. Sudo is typically intended to only allow a certain set of people to run a very limited set of commands as a different elevated privilege user, as we all know. But when you couple that with the limitations of the controls available in sudo, Unix and Linux systems become overly exposed to an increasing number of internal and external security threats. But given some of the challenges that we touched on earlier that the federal government has to face, and given its easy access and liberal governance, system administrators often use the sudo command for everyday commands and tasks, bypassing agency policy, network security, and compliance requirements. So again, I ask, what can be done to enforce least privilege within a Unix Linux environment? Well, first and foremost, as an agency, you must decide not to use open source tools. Instead, replace it with a commercial solution that supports over 100 Unix and Linux variations with centralized management and command level delegation, backed by comprehensive auditing, monitoring, and threat analytics. A tool like BeyondTrust Power Broker for Unix and Linux. Our solution enhances security through a fine-grained, policy-based control of privileged accounts. Enables compliance through fully indexed logging and recording of all activity performed by the user. It helps you achieve policy-driven command elevation and auditing down to the system level with no change to the user experience. And it enables segregation of duties for compliance by classifying IT tasks, in addition to utilizing the latest encryption technology with FIPS 140-2 level 2 and 3 validation for data both in transit and at rest. So by using Power Broker for Windows, Mac, Unix, Linux, and password safe, agencies can put in place the best practice of managing privileged credentials with greater discipline, eliminating administrator rights, and enforcing least privilege within an environment, putting control of the desktop, server, and laptop in the hands of the skilled and trusted IT staff you have within your agency. The second best practice you can implement to start reducing risk in your environment is to isolate legacy systems to reduce attack surfaces. Per the survey, 73% of respondents rated modernization of federal IT a top priority within their agencies, which is why you are seeing a big push to the cloud as discussed earlier. But budgets for modernization is limited, and getting things done takes time. Realistically, this will not happen quickly. The road to modernization will be long and complex because of the unique nature of the federal government. Meanwhile, today, aging custom-built systems and applications still in-house house mission-critical information. In fact, 69% of our survey respondents indicated that the risk of taking these systems down could outweigh the risk and cost of maintaining them. So the sad fact is these aging systems have known risk and thus continues to expose agencies to an increased risk of data breaches. So what can be done? Well, if you implement this best practice of reducing the attack surface by isolating legacy systems, you'll be able to segment these legacy systems to force all traffic through a proxy to reduce attack vectors. You'll also, by deploying an automated password and session management solution, provide secure access control, auditing, alerting, and recording for any privileged account. This will provide segmented access to critical systems, manage passwords, and monitor when tasks and operations are committed to a managed system, helping you ultimately reduce risk associated with legacy systems and applications. So once you deploy the solution and implement the best practice, the next logical question is, where do you start? Well, I'm a big believer in going after the low-hanging fruit. Let's knock out the easiest things first that will quickly move the needle and show progress. So sticking with that mindset, federal IT organizations can show progress towards reducing the attack surface by tackling a common use case. For example, controlling third-party access to internal systems. Now, typically within the federal government, an IT team consists of a government lead or chief. That government lead has a second in command from the government or a supervisor of some sort. And then typically you have one or two government IT professionals. But the rest of the team is made up of badge contractors from either a services organization or a system integrator. In addition to that, people on a regular basis leave the federal government. Either they find a new opportunity or their current employer may lose the contract with their agency in a recompete scenario. Many times, leaving former employees' data and accounts active and accessible within your network, even well after their departure. So very often, the weak link in the security chain is remote access by third-party vendors, possibly putting on a proof of concept within your environment or performing maintenance or some type of professional services engagement. In addition to contractors, past or present, who have or had remote access to critical systems. All this activity and access stresses the need for controlled network separation and activity monitoring. We can provide you this functionality by means of our PowerBroker Password Safe solution. In addition to the automated password management capabilities this solution provides you, as discussed earlier in the webinar, it can also provide a secure connection gateway with the ability to proxy access to RDP, SSH, Windows applications, and many other applications like WinSCP, vSphere, and various databases, just to name a few, all without the need for agents or Java. PowerBroker Password Safe, if so desired, will never expose privileged credentials. It also comes equipped with a fully audited recording of the session. This capability ensures that all session access is monitored, logged, and available for playback in the case of a forensic investigation or an audit. And most importantly, this solution helps you put into action the best practice of isolating legacy systems to reduce attack surfaces. Another way federal agencies can show progress towards reducing attack surfaces is by implementing a solution that's capable of cycling passwords on remote or intermittently connected systems. Not all roles within the federal government require employees or contractors to sit on site. There are countless roles like field agents, scientists, and various types of engineering roles that require extensive travel and long periods away from the office and network for that matter. These individuals many times are issued government laptops. These laptops travel around the world and clouds start and stop as they are needed. Attempting to manage the local passwords on most of these machines is challenging and would most likely end up with a very high failure rate due to connectivity issues or machines being offline. But regardless of the challenge associated with it, agencies must ensure that these credentials for local non-domain accounts are properly cycled and checked for compliance, and that the introduction of defaults or non-safe credentials are brought back into compliance. But how do you go about doing this? Well, by using an automated password management solution, again, like PowerBroker Password Safe, in conjunction with a least privileged solution like PowerBroker for Windows. You can periodically check that any outstanding password-related tasks are not missed, and if they were, complete the process when the original change event fails. This integration ensures reliability in managing local credentials, even in highly separated environments, or when machines are commonly offline during the scheduled password change. In a dynamic cloud environment, again, private on-premise or public cloud environment, you can ensure that Windows computers return to compliance upon restart or reintroduction into the environment. Again, helping reduce the attack surface by ensuring even remote systems are compliant and passwords follow the password security policies that you defined for your agency. The third best practice you can implement to start reducing risk in your environment is to improve the maturity of vulnerability management through automated patching. Even though attacks against IT systems are becoming more sophisticated, most attacks still target known vulnerabilities that can easily be patched, which is why it's critical for a federal agency to have a clearly defined and effective patch management strategy. As mentioned earlier, per our federal survey results, 63% report less than fully mature vulnerability remediation programs. 6% have no remediation plan whatsoever, and another 14% do only the bare minimum required by compliance mandates. So what needs to be done to improve the maturity of vulnerability management within an agency? Well, management requires intelligent ranking and extensive coverage for common business applications. So said another way, at minimum, the solution should discover any asset with an IP address and its associated vulnerabilities. It should improve the efficiency and effectiveness of an agency patch process. You should be able to deploy a solution that provides integrated automated patching. So not only should it be able to discover and prioritize your vulnerabilities, but it should be able to be integrated with your patching systems like your SCCM server or your WSUS server to also allow you to remediate those vulnerabilities found within your environment. You also want to implement a solution that delivers analytics and trending across the threat lifecycle for multi-dimensional reports on assets, vulnerabilities, attacks, and remediation allows prioritized patch management based on risk profile. And finally, scan your environment regularly and frequently for vulnerabilities. Many customers I speak to within the federal government typically only scan their environment once a month, some once a quarter. I strongly advise against this. At minimum, it should be once a week, in my opinion. Many of you have heard of the DHS Continuous Diagnostic and Mitigation Program, or CDM for short. Phase 1 of this program covers endpoint integrity, which involves vulnerability management. For Task Order 2A, BeyondTrust Retina was chosen as the vulnerability management solution. This phase dictates that those who participate within this program continually scan their entire environment within 72 hours for vulnerabilities. Now, many of you may view this as aggressive or not necessarily applicable to your environment, and it may not be, but it shows the importance of frequent vulnerability scans within an enterprise class environment. By putting these recommendations in place, it will go a long way towards reducing a network's overall attack surface. But with today's complex infrastructures, how do you know what's plugged into your network and what risk they pose? It's a valid question. Again, today's IT network infrastructures are becoming more complex. These enterprise class environments can have tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of assets, making it a challenge to manage. With a mix of in-house physical and virtual systems, cloud-based environments, and more. In addition to shadow IT, which is becoming more and more prevalent in the federal government. End users are literally using their credit cards to spin up virtual machines in the cloud environment instead of using the resources provided to them by their agency, putting the agency's systems and data in jeopardy. Oftentimes, leaving federal IT teams not knowing what's plugged into or installed on their own networks and what risk they may pose. Therefore, it's critical you have a vulnerability management solution in place that will allow you to see every asset within your environment and their associated risk. BeyondTrust Retina CS is an agentless and agent-based scanning technology designed to discover any asset with an IP address within your environment. So that goes for physical devices, virtual devices, devices that may be in the cloud. Again, private on-premise clouds or public cloud environments. BeyondTrust Retina CS can also help you reduce the attack surface by identifying vulnerabilities, misconfigurations, malware, and attacks within your environment. It will help you save time and simplify remediation by integrating with your WSUS server and your SCCM server for patching. It also increases security visibility and maximizes investments by sharing asset, user, and threat data with third-party security systems by means of our connector technology. And it assures compliance with regulatory standards such as NIST 800-53 or HIPAA, for example. And lastly, keeping in line with our recommended third best practice, all steps within the vulnerability management lifecycle, including discovery and assessment, can be fully automated. This allows Retina CS to actively discover, alert, and assess an agency with little to no user interaction. The fourth best practice you can implement to start reducing risk in your environment is to unite threat intelligence from multiple sources to better prioritize risk across the environment. So why is this important? Well, despite all your hard work, sadly, there's no one single silver bullet to meet all the government's cybersecurity needs. Despite your best efforts, you may still experience a breach. By employing a unified solution that's capable of handling privileged access management and vulnerability management, this will allow correlation of user activity with vulnerability data to determine where an attack originated and its history within the protected environment. For example, advanced persistent threats, APTs, can be analyzed against privileged password, user, and account activity, along with asset characteristics such as vulnerability count, vulnerability level, attacks detected, risk score, applications, services, software, and ports. The solution should also integrate and ingest data from third-party cybersecurity solutions, consuming multiple data feeds from in-place solutions into a single console can help ease additional costs and reduce complexity. At the end of the day, all vulnerability management solutions in the market can scan and produce a data dump of found vulnerability. But few extend beyond that silo to correlate vulnerable applications to those that are being used on what systems and by what users. BeyondTrust provides this additional value. But how do we go about doing that? By prioritizing remediation based on active applications, enabling agencies to focus their remediation efforts on applications that pose a higher risk as they are actively being used versus those that may be part of a standard agency image but seldom or never used. By deploying Retina CS integrated with our least privileged tool, PowerBroker for Windows, we're able to deliver vulnerability-based application management. We can enable agencies to cover or control the privilege or deny execution of vulnerable applications as a step to temporarily remediate a security risk until the application is updated. Analytics, while valuable, traditional security analytics solutions many times miss the mark, struggling to correlate diverse data to discern hidden risk among all the noise within your environment. Thus, apparently isolated events are written off many times as exceptions or filtered out or lost altogether in a sea of data, while an intruder continues to navigate your network and damage mounts up. So what can be done to combat this? Well, here at BeyondTrust, we believe in providing our customers with the big picture from various angles so that they can see that cybersecurity storm coming for them in the distance and make intelligent, informed decisions on how to weather that storm. We provide the ability to apply risk and vulnerability intelligence to automatically halt access for high-risk privileged accounts. automatically rotate passwords that are considered compromised, and more. By means of our built-in threat analytics platform, Clarity, we can provide a clear view of security events from integrated BeyondTrust solutions, as well as external data feeds. With Clarity, we can pinpoint specific high-risk users and assets by correlating low-level privilege, vulnerability, and threat data. So simply put, Beyond Insight Clarity correlates both retina scan data and Power Broker privilege access management events to pinpoint users and systems that may have gone rogue or have been compromised. So as a recap, here are some of the recommendations that we have already touched on that will help you mitigate risk in an aging federal IT system environment. First, you want to mitigate insider threats and the misuse of privileges. So you should adopt a least privilege model by removing admin rights from users and storing all privileged credentials in a secure safe. By enforcing least privilege, this will prevent lateral movement within the organization if a breach does occur. Step 2, deploy an automated password and session management solution that provides secure access control, auditing, alerting, and recording for any privileged account. This will provide segmented access to critical systems, manage passwords, and monitor when tasks and operations are committed to a managed system. Step 3, improve the efficiency and success of an agency patch process. Deploy a solution that provides integrated automated patching, implementing a solution that delivers analytics and trending across the entire threat lifecycle for multi-dimensional reports on assets, vulnerabilities, attacks, and remediation allows prioritized patch management based on a risk profile. And lastly, deploys a solution that correlates asset-based risk with user-based activity to gain a more complete picture of risk, gaining needed ranking of the most impactful risk within your environment. Consuming multiple data feeds from an in-place solutions into a single console can again help mitigate additional costs and reduce complexity. If you have any further questions or would like a demonstration of our technology to see how it can help you mitigate risk in your environment, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Thank you, and now I'll turn it back.
Thank you so much, Shunta. Great stuff, great content, a lot of things that people can think about and take back to their organization and environment. So great stuff, you guys. Let's go ahead and jump into our last poll here. We would love to help you with your privileged access and or vulnerability management needs. Would you like to be contacted for a deeper conversation and a one-on-one demo with a BeyondTrust security specialist? Let us know. Select yes. Don't worry, you won't hurt my feelings if you don't select yes. But if you do, somebody will be in contact with you and to schedule your personalized demo. I'll leave this up. Let's dive into a couple of questions that we received from the live audience, and then we'll wrap this up. Shunta, how is your solution deployed?
Great question. So we can actually be deployed in one of three ways. We actually have what we call virtual appliances. So essentially it's a virtual machine that has our software pre-installed on it. It's hardened and locked down, and we can be deployed that way within your environment. Today we support 2 hypervisors. We support VMware as well as Microsoft Hyper-V. We also have a physical appliance. Same concept. Our software is pre-installed on a x86 server. That server is hardened or locked down, and that can be deployed within your environment as well. And then the third option is what we call a software install. So essentially, you have existing servers within your environment. They meet our specs, and we install the appropriate software packages on those existing servers.
Okay, Shunta, can you import third-party scan data?
We can actually. So we are able to import a large number of our competitors' scan data into our IT risk management platform or single pane of glass management platform Beyond Insight, such as Rapid7, Tenable, McAfee, MVM, to name a few. So short answer is yes, we can. And this actually helps customers who are looking to either move away from their existing vulnerability management solution or because it went end of life, or because they just want to upgrade to a different type of solution. This ensures that you can do it in a phased approach, if you will. Instead of coming in and ripping and replacing out the solution, you can do it very logically and, again, in a phased approach while we stand up our solution within your environment.
Okay, we have one more question. Let me close this poll so that your contact info is up for the remaining of the webinar. Last question for you. Can you expound on your reporting functionality?
Sure. So, at the end of the day, vulnerability scanning is vulnerability scanning. One of the things that truly separates us, we believe, or differentiates us from many of our competitors is our robust reporting functionality. So we have what you call analytics and reporting, which is also built into our IT risk management platform, BeyondTrust. This provides customers with 270 plus canned reports, in addition to the ability to create custom reports by means of our pivot grid technology. Additionally, BeyondTrust by itself will provide you with reporting capabilities as well. So the idea of our reporting capabilities is to kind of get away from that phone book size report that you get with other solutions and really help you prioritize, discover, and remediate vulnerabilities even faster out of your environment, in addition to reporting on other things such as particular software that may be installed on the many assets you have, or user activity that may seem weird or rogue in behavior. So we can report on a number of categories. And again, our reporting functionality is one of the things that we think differentiates us.
Great. And just a reminder, folks, that if you do want to reach out to Shunta personally, there is his email. He'd be happy to walk you through any further questions that you might have or related to this webinar or something else within the federal space. So a kind reminder as well that you will be receiving an email with a link to the recording and the slides shown here today within 2 business days from now, and it will come from our email alias communications@beyondtrust.com. So make sure that that email is whitelisted so that you receive the follow-up without any interruption. A huge thanks to Shunta. Thank you so much for being here today. A great webinar. I hope everybody enjoyed it as well. And to everybody who attended live, we do appreciate you guys being here, asking questions, engaging with us, and always being supportive of our content and our webinars. So thanks again, everybody, for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your day and your week. Take care, everybody. Goodbye.